So, okay, so this is just one of our bi-weekly kind of update calls. We've got a couple things that we did get some information on. So we will proceed. Again, let's do the PowerPoint, and maybe your question might be answered in the during the PowerPoint presentation. Otherwise, so don't put anything in the chat. And then, like we always do, we'll go to the chat at the end and we'll get everybody's questions answered there. But again, your question might be answered, so just maybe hold off a little bit before you put anything in. So last week, a little over a week ago, another nationwide waiver was issued, and it's regarding, it's number 100. They are now over 100 in waivers, but today there's several that were issued last Friday morning that, from what I can tell, they don't pertain to schools. They've used a new term in them that we're waiting on guidance on, because we had a call with USDA last Thursday. We may have gotten them Thursday morning, and they didn't even know what the term was, which is, you know, that's kind of scary. But so this 100 that came out on the 15th of September is regarding the state agency can use some discretion when allowing fiscal actions during a review this school year that we're currently in, when it's related to a COVID-19 supply chain disruption. So there's some flexibility that the state can take into consideration for that. And we were really leaning towards that to begin with, because obviously you have your meal pattern flexibility as well, for that can be tied to supply chain disruptions. So that is, I've gotten a lot of calls on this from a couple from vendors and a couple management companies that have called me regarding this COVID-19 waiver for fiscal action flexibility for meal pattern violations related to COVID-19 supply chain disruptions impacting school meals in school year 21-22. That's exactly what the title of the memo is. So there is some flexibility there. That does not mean that you don't have to meet meal patterns, and that does not mean you don't keep production records. That is not the intent of the waiver. We received guidance on that from USDA last week, because that is what the assumption is, because of this waiver, that we now don't have to look at some of this. We don't have to take into account meal patterns, or we don't have to take into account production records, and that's not the case. So Dana, if you want to forward on this or advance the slide. And again, like I just said, waiver 100 is not a blanket waiver to not meet the meal patterns. You still are required to meet the meal patterns to the greatest extent that you can. And yes, we do know there are supply chain issues, and there continue to be supply chain issues, and those will continue. Right now, I don't, I'd like to say that it's going to change, but based on the things we continue to hear on calls with other states, from you all and emails, the field staff being out there hearing things, it's not looking real promising at this point. So you do still need to meet meal patterns as best you can, even with the supply chain issue disruptions that are going on. So plan to serve meals as designed, which would be reimbursable meals. If products are not received from vendors, then you need to keep your documentation on this. And it can be done by keeping copies of invoices showing that you were outed food, even keeping emails from your vendors showing that they don't have certain products you've tried to order, or they cannot get what you're trying to order, or again, they're outing you and not sending you what you're trying to order. The key here is that you maintain your documentation for products that you can't get. But if just because you can't get a whole grain biscuit, for example, you might be able to get another whole grain. Maybe whole grain bread is available. That's an alternative you can serve. Maybe you can't get whole grain bread. Maybe whole grains in general are a problem. That's the type of information you need to keep your documentation for. You need to continue to be in communications with your field consultant, your child nutrition consultant, for the waiver options that are available to you all this year based on the flexibilities. And we are working with you. We are not trying to be cumbersome in any of this, I promise. That is not our intent. But we also get, should I say, from the horse's mouth, what you need to be doing. You need the targeted and justified. You've got to be able to try. Just reaching out to one vendor isn't going to cut it. We realize that your one vendor you normally use may not be able to get whole grain, but you have, and we'll come to a slide on this in a minute, you have that emergency procurement clause. You can use other vendors if you need to right now because of that. And let's go to the next slide, Dana. Production records are still required. We've had multiple consultants going to schools lately, and production records are blank. That's not okay. That is your documentation that meal patterns are being met and the quantities for those meal patterns are being met. You need to complete all columns must contain the required information. Temperature logs need to be maintained as well, either on your production record or another form. Some of you maintain them in both places. Some of you keep a temperature log on your refrigerators and freezers. That's acceptable. Temperature logs for your food, it's best to keep them in your production records, but I also know that some of you keep that on a clipboard on the line, and that's okay too, but that's food safety has not been waived. You must, all columns in the production records must be completed, containing the amounts of food served and the number of children served. The other thing we're seeing lately is grade groups not being followed for in-person feeding. So if you're feeding at a middle school or a high school, we're seeing that those meal patterns aren't being followed. And in-person meals, those need to be followed. Let me go back one more, Dana. Sorry, I want to touch on one thing on here. And just as a reminder, there's 3 grade groups, the K5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. There is a K8 option for lunch. Keep that in mind. We do have a lot of K8 districts out there, and you can do a K8 for them. And then if you remember at breakfast, there is a K12 grade group that you can serve for everyone. If you have questions, again, let's talk about it. Let's, be your consultant, or if you, send an email or talk to Dana and I. Okay, sorry about that, Dana. Commodities, you still have to keep your perpetual inventory for commodities, as well as refrigerator and freezer logs. The last thing you want to happen is to not have a refrigerator and freezer log where you keep your commodity food. That can cause and cost you issues down the road with your commodities, because if you start to see a difference in your temperature for several days, could be a sign that you're having trouble with that refrigerator or freezer. And so you've got to maintain those records for commodities as well. It's not just us. Okay, and next slide. Again, just as a reminder, there are other waivers for SSO. They're being done on a case-by-case basis for meal patterns involving whole grain vegetable subgroups. Milk, we've known about that for a while. Even the sodium target, we're allowing that. There's still waivers for non-congregate feeding if you're serving, if you're an open site and you're serving your virtual learners and they're coming to get meals. There's mealtime flexibility to where you can give, breakfast and lunch at the same time for that day or multiple days. And there's still an offer versus serve flexibility for high school, because that's normally required at the high school level. But because of COVID and you want to get kids through the line, you don't have to do offer versus serve for your high school kids at lunch if you don't want to, because again, trying to get them through the line, you just give them everything. These really aren't intended. We found out, I think we've known this, but they did reiterate this on our call with USDA last Thursday. These aren't necessarily intended for the whole year. They're kind of needed to be used when they're needed. So, we clearly see the supply chain issue lasting several more months, maybe even, towards the first of the year. So things might need to be evaluated after the first of the year regarding some of these waivers. We just can't waive them the entire school year. Okay, next. The application system has been open. We are really close to being done with all applications, and keep in mind that we are trying to reach out to you all via email, mostly for your changes or things that need to be corrected on your application system and claim system. So be checking your emails. There are a few districts out there that haven't even started their FY22 application, and we need you all to do that. we've been reaching out at that point too. But if you're unsure, you might go in there and see if you can see and start your FY22 application in the application system. If you're having trouble filing a claim, it could be that your application one is not approved, maybe hasn't been started, or was kind of kicked out because it needs corrections and you were emailed. So check your emails and reach out to them once you read it and if you have questions. Keeping in mind that if you're operating SSO, which right now our understanding is most all districts in Oklahoma are doing SSO, you will claim by site. If you're still unsure, and we're going into October, but if you're still unsure what you should be doing, please reach out to us. You should be operating SSO, feeding all meals free, and being reimbursed at the higher summer food service program reimbursement. Weekend meals are not allowed on SSO, as a reminder. That was in a memo several months back, nor are holidays. And don't forget to do your monitoring of your SSO program. And then if you're multi-sited, you have to do your on-site review by February 1st for lunch and breakfast under the National School Lunch Program. And those forms are in the Child Nutrition Manual online. If you need guidance on where to find that, let us know. Your SSO claim reminder, you'll want to click on select in the top set of boxes in the picture, and then it drops down and all your sites are listed there. You select elementary, middle, high school to file a claim. You do have to, in that drop down box that has an arrow over to it, you have to select SSO, and that's for breakfast and lunch. You definitely have to select the SSO claim to file a claim by site. And then next slide. You may get the message on the left of the screen. And keep in mind that there is not a view claim summary in NSLP SBP claims. I'm sorry, there's not a view claim summary for SSO claims. I apologize. So it's a little bit different, but you do need to submit each one of your claims. Okay, and next. A reminder about adult and staff meals. Schedule B on your application, you need to complete the adult section and staff section for meal prices. If you're not charging the minimum, which is $1.97 for breakfast, $4.13 for lunch, and $1 for snack, we have to have an explanation of what funds, because child nutrition funds can't cover those meals, so what federal, non-federal funds are covering those meals. If you're charging half that amount, we would need to know that. If you're not charging at all, we need to know that. And there is also a form to track adult and staff meals, and that's the next slide that Dana just put up. And it actually takes either the amount the difference in the amount you're not charging and what you need to be charging, or if you're not charging the full amount at all, it takes that into consideration. You track that on a monthly basis with your adult meals. The next slide will show that. And you'll put in for each month the number of adult meals, the difference in the price, or the full price if you're not charging at all. And it totals it for each meal, breakfast and lunch. And you have a total at the bottom, and that's the amount that non-federal funds must cover for child nutrition for those adult meals that either aren't being paid for or partially being paid for by the teacher. As far as coding of expenditure to cover adult and staff meals, if the general fund is paying for or supplementing your adult or staff meals and you code child nutrition to your general fund, which is Fund 11, you've got to have a way to show how these funds are being tracked. And that is information from OCAS. If you are interested in doing the at-risk program, which is under our child and adult care food program, a lot of people term this the supper or third meal. That is a whole nother program outside of school lunch, school breakfast that you have to apply for. It's under our, like I said, child and adult care food program. It's not even the same as the after school snack program. So if you're interested in doing that, you'll need to contact our office to apply. We are currently, our FY22 application for that program is open, and applications are being done right now because that runs on a federal fiscal year, October 1st of the year to September 30th of the next. Unlike the school year, it runs different. Okay. Again, keeping in mind that you still have the emergency purchasing procurement flexibility right now because of COVID and supply chain issues. So if you've had an issue with a contract that you entered into and now they can't fulfill it and you feel like you need to go outside of that contract, you can do that fairly easily by reaching out to another vendor to try and get those items. And again, you still might potentially have issues with another vendor, but there's options there. The emergency funding letters have been mailed. They were mailed several weeks ago. If no funds were payable, you would not have received a letter. The first round of payments are going out this week, September 30th, Thursday. Keep in mind that this money may only be spent on allowable CN costs. And after you receive the funds, probably the latter part of October, maybe first part of November, there'll be a very short survey that will go out that we will ask that you to complete just to let us know what you spent those funds on for allowable costs. And then this is we kind of firmed up some information today. So this was a new slide we added at the last minute. Because of the way our systems are, and this was not money that was tied to a claim or meals per se. I mean, it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. These are being deposited, these funds, these emergency funds are being deposited where your state aid funds are normally deposited. The NSLP code, project code for these is 762, and the revenue source code is 4705. And then for CACFP at risk, for these funds specifically, keep in mind it's project code 761 with a revenue source of 4704. Keeping in mind, these are only to be spent on allowable child nutrition expenses. And those codes, please keep in mind, because it threw me earlier, Dana had to remind me, these codes that I just talked about are for the emergency money. Keep that in mind. This isn't the normal code that you have for your claims. This is for the emergency money. You don't need to send us invoices or receipts in here. We're not asking for any of that, but you need to maintain that documentation at your school district for these funds. And again, a reminder, a short survey will be sent out later in October regarding how these funds were spent. That's coming too. Okay, do we have any more slides? We added one. I didn't know if we, oh, can you, next slide, Dana? Are we stuck? Are we frozen? I was on a call right before this one, and the whole time we kept
you may be frozen because I'm on the recap that we will have administrative review.
I just got it. It just forwarded. So it's just delayed apparently. Sorry. Okay. Recap of ARs, we will be conducting administrative reviews this year of child nutrition. So if you were scheduled to have a review last school year in 2021, you will have one this year in 21-22. That includes a child nutrition review as well as a procurement review. And keep in mind, we do contract those procurement reviews out. And so someone from that company would be contacting you regarding that information. Okay, let's see if we freeze again. Next slide. Okay, the link for the calls are always in other documents on CARS, and the link for 2 weeks ago is there and can be found on other documents in CARS. And then, okay, so now if you still have questions, which that's fine if you do, that's why we're here, please go ahead and add them to the chat, and we will get to the chat in just a second. I'm going to scroll to where I can see. I don't think too many came in while I was talking. Most of those are that you could hear both of us. So, okay, so they're starting to come in, and that's when my chat jumps. How come my pre-K sites can't be their own site on SSO? Whoop, there it jumped again. Sorry. I understand NSLP, but I don't understand why they can't under SSO. Sean, I'm really not following that, so we might need to have a conversation on that. We might need to just do a conversation, have a conversation regarding that, Shauna. I think that would be best. The money for the emergency funds will be deposited into the account where your state aid money goes. So you'll need to ask your finance person at your district where that would be. The payment notice looks the same as ours do normally, and it'll have our information on it, but it goes into that account. Okay, sorry, every time a question comes in, my chat does jump. I apologize. I want to try and stay on track here. I had to step away for a moment and I missed slide 7. Dana, is that slide 7 about commodities? Commodities, it's still required to keep a perpetual inventory in your refrigerator and freezer logs.
That's my number 7.
Then that's probably right. Is anyone else having issues with direct cert lists from the wave? You still have graduating kids showing up. Okay, so let's.
And that may be because of how the PEBT is working this year with those graduating seniors. They may still be showing up because they are eligible for PEBT from the 2021 school year.
That is true. Okay, can we use emergency funds to repair kitchen equipment? Yes, that would be an allowable expense. Yes, it would. If I am charging at least the minimum amount for adults, do I have to keep the worksheet? You do not have to keep that worksheet if you're charging the $1.97 for breakfast and the $4.13 for lunch. You are correct. Who would you call about the grant application? If you're referring to the equipment grant application, it's in CARS. If you're not talking about let me know what grant you're referring to. I have spoke with Dana and Eric, so I was just wondering if others are having, okay. Can you have a salad bar with 3rd through 8th grade students serving themselves? As far as our program, you sure can, but I don't know, is the health department saying anything about salad bars this year because of COVID? Haven't really asked that or heard that. Where do we go for the form for adult lunches? Ask your child nutrition field consultant. They can email that to you. I have a question about the grant. Okay, I need to know if it's not the equipment grant, what grant it is. The equipment grant can be found in CARS. Okay, so the snack bar told you, oh, okay, it was your choice. Or not the snack bar, I'm sorry. The health department told you that salad bars it was up to you at your particular district. Okay. And then somebody is saying, oh, it jumped again. I'm having last year's exited students still showing on my direct cert list. Exiting students as well. Okay.
So it looks like we have multiple schools that are still having those graduating seniors. And guys, remember, we here in child nutrition really don't have anything to do with the direct cert list. So that may be something we communicate with Eric in the next couple of days and see if it's to do with the PEBT or if something else is going on.
Okay. Then, oh, there, jumped again. The next one says, I'm assuming this is, can we use the funds for a warmer? Yes, you could use, that's allowable. If it's over $5,000 and not on our approved list, though, I will have to approve that. So if you have questions, let us know. Okay, oh, there it went again. I've been trying to get whole grain items and have only 2 vendors. The cost is horrible. Muffin mix enriched is $36 and the special order, which may or may not ship, is $76. Is this grounds to request a waiver? I mean, if they're telling you they can't get it to you, that would be, yes. But you've reached out to your current vendor and 2 others potentially, then, and they're telling you, and if you have documentation that they can't get it, then yes, that would be a potential reason for a waiver. More questions about PEBT from parents only receiving the card for one student, not other siblings. You've checked your SIS and it's marked correctly on our end. They have not paid out all benefits yet. That could be part of it. The other part is if they had one child in-person learning and one child virtual learning, the in-person student wouldn't get the benefit. It was for virtual learners. That could be another issue. There will be an opportunity for corrections mid to late October. And so they would need to take advantage of that. Right now, they need to, everything has to be paid out first. So there is a chance they could still get that if they were eligible for them. Has any information been sent regarding the funds for those? No, but that is, I need to be starting that process because we did finally receive that money. Thank you for helping me remember that. It is on my list. Okay, I'm just making another note. Okay, let's see. I'm sorry. Like I said, it jumps. It didn't used to do this. Seems like maybe since an update or something. It may be the way they select the report on the wave. Okay, so somebody's chiming in on that. I have to not just say full report on mine. So you've had luck with that. Okay, that might help somebody. Your sliced bread didn't show up today. Interesting. What, just out of curiosity, Shauna, was it a whole grain bread or was it just bread in general that you didn't get? I'm just kind of curious for my part. What, oh gosh. Can a district still get the grant if they got it 2 years ago? Is it site-based or district-based for the time? It's site-based. So if a site has received the equipment grant in a prior year, right now, regardless of how long ago it was, that site is not eligible. Another site would have to apply if equipment was needed for it. So it is. I understand, Jim. My chat has a mind of its own today, apparently. Site, Dana, do we limit them on the number of sites that can apply? I'm drawing a blank on that.
No, we don't. They can apply for any site who has
Okay.
not received the grant.
Okay. That's in any of the prior equipment grant years. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. Let's see, was the Zoom meeting for the equipment grant recorded? Yes, it was. And it is in CARS, right, Dana?
Yes, it has been posted under the equipment grant section.
Okay. Only virtual students receive, yes, it was for students that, because of COVID, had reduced hours, reduced attendance. Virtual, which USDA defined virtual as being closed, those are the kids that received it. It was not for in-person learners. And they had to have been free and reduced, attend a CEP school, provision 1 or 2. Yeah. So if again, if a family had 2 children and one of them was a virtual learner and the other one went in person, only the virtual learner was eligible for those, unless the sibling at one time or another had to go virtual for a few days for, quarantine purposes, or the school district closed for, 10 days or whatever, then that would, those few days, 10 days, 5 days, whatever it might be, would be qualifying days. Let's see, where was I? So can the emergency funds be used for your regular food orders? Sorry, it jumped again. Or does it? No, I mean, you could use it for food. That's an allowable expense. You're welcome, Jim. When I order our US food truck and they're out of whole grain biscuits for delivery, the next day, but the next day I check and they have some in stock. What do you suggest we do? I have a few other items that keep doing that as well. If you're able to get the product, I would go ahead and get the whole grain product. So maybe you order one time and they're out, so you do a replacement, but then you go to order them the next time and you can get them, go ahead and get them. If you're able to get the product that meets the meal patterns, that's what you should be getting. I think, okay, Leanne was answering if they apply for 20 sites. I mean, yeah, 20.
Jennifer,
Yeah.
I'll kind of take Leanne's.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll take Leanne's question a little bit. Possibly, yes, their sites could all receive, but we put those into a scoring criteria based on free and reduced and the need of the equipment, the age of the equipment you're replacing, the amount of the cost of the equipment you're planning to purchase. So chances are, Tulsa and Oklahoma City, you guys are the two biggest sites that would maybe have 20 sites. If they put all of theirs in there, chances are some of those are going to be higher free and reduced and may not be in those ones that are selected because of the criteria that it's based on. So very unlikely that a school puts in a request for 20 sites and all 20 sites would be selected. Just don't see that really happening.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cough right into the mic, but all of a sudden I had to cough and I couldn't get it muted in time. Okay, will the verification training for tomorrow be put in cars? Yes, it will. Maybe I apply for 5 steamers and a serving line. You can apply for whatever you'd like. Again, if it's at a site that hasn't had an equipment grant granted or equipment granted through that, you can apply. Again, Dana was explaining that we have a scoring criteria that we have to put it through that USDA approves, and every step of the equipment grant is sent to USDA for approval before we go out with it. It has to be done according to their requirements. So I know you've talked about PEBT already, but if they received a card last year, will they get another this year? Okay, so I could take that one of two ways. Will they get the benefit just because they got it the last time? No. Or if they are getting the benefit, will the money be put on the same card? Not necessarily. So I'm not sure for D Frame's question if I answered that the way you needed, the way you were going with that, but let me know if I can talk a little bit more about that to make sure I get your question answered. Is there a way to check if the district will be receiving the emergency funding? Well, did the district get a letter saying they would be, or you could email Dana Parker and she could tell you whatever you'd like to do. And she can put her email in the chat and she can look up for you. Just a wondering question, if you are doing last year's reviews, will this year, wondering if you are doing last year's reviews this year, will that move up the entire schedule of reviews by a year? Well, we're kind of behind a year technically on reviews because we didn't do reviews in 2021. So we're doing any reviews that needed to have been done in 2021 this school year. Let's see. Shauna, you could use your emergency funding money for that too. The site you want the serving line is literally rotting out. You could, I mean, I know Oklahoma City was getting some emergency money, but I don't know how much off the top of my head. So I can't necessarily guess if that would cover it, but that would certainly help cover some of it. So you might think about that. Dana put her name in chat. And then somebody, I skipped one, sorry, Krista. If they got a card last year and they are eligible this year, do you know if they will get a new physical card? I believe they will, but I don't want to speak for DHS because they are issuing the cards and they made that determination. The parent that can't find hers, she might want to reach out to them regarding that. I hope that it didn't have excess funds on it for her sake, but I would ideally, for card issuance and amounts and things like that, that actually is handled through DHS. Where will emergency funds be deposited? They're going to be deposited into the account where your state aid goes. So please reach out to your encumbrance clerk to find out. It could be the same account as child nutrition. It's possible, but it may not be. So reach out to someone at your finance person at your district. Received equipment grant in 19. When would be eligible to apply again, if ever? Really need to replace outdated equipment in the kitchen that is over 20 years old. Linda, I don't know what district you're with, so I don't know if you have more than one site, but if you have an elementary and a middle and a high school, and the elementary got it last time, the middle and high school are still eligible to apply. I hope that helps. Also, maybe you got some emergency funding money potentially that could help cover that too. Schools got ESSER money, and TSET has grant funds, so they can't. So can't they use them? I know that ESSER money is earmarked for specific things, so you just have to check with the person at the district that deals with those funds. And then TSET, again, there's requirements on grants that they put out all the time, but I know sometimes it is for equipment for child nutrition, but it just depends on what the grant is issuing money for this time or right now. Let's see, do you know if parents are going to be receiving PEBT cards again this year? If so, will benefits be the same? They have to be virtual and either free or reduced. Yes, if you're referring to this year, meaning school year 21-22, there will be PEBT benefits for school year 21-22 that we're currently in. It will be based on the virtual, and it will be based on free and reduced. So another reason to promote free and reduced applications, potentially. If a school district had to go virtual, there's PEBT money tied to free and reduced. Also, CEP Provision 1 and 2 are eligible. Okay, so you're only one site. Well, darn it, I tried, Linda. Maybe emergency money. Yes, there is PEBT frequently asked questions sheet on the SDE website. If you go to sde.ok.gov and in the top right corner, type in PEBT and hit search. There is PEBT information there, and if you scroll down to the bottom of that, there's a link for families and there's a link for districts information. And so there's some good information in there. Also, Edgar put in the chat, what if I lose my card? And that's part of, in the frequently asked questions, there's a hotline. DHS has a hotline for PEBT cards, lost and stolen cards, things like that. 405-522-5050. You just reach out to our office. I'm assuming you're Linda. How do you find out which site got the grant? I keep forgetting to read the question. I apologize. My assumption is you're referring to the equipment grant. And if you're not sure, because it's been multiple years and we've all been through a lot the last 18 months, then yes, you can reach out to us. We have a way to look that up. Carrie, repeat what? Lost or stolen cards? The hotline number is 405-522-5050, and that's a hotline at DHS for lost, stolen cards, etc. If that's what you were meaning, I'm sorry. You might, if that's not what you were asking me to repeat, please let me know. We received a grant a few years ago, but I don't remember which site it was for. Okay, yeah, we can look that up. Edgar did put into the chat. You can even do sde.ok.gov/PEBT. That's another way to get to it. It'll take you right to it. You can click on that link right there in the chat or copy and paste it. If you have used all your state equipment grants, check on No Kid Hungry. Okay, sometimes they do grants as well. And when they do, we do put that stuff, we send that stuff out in emails and let you all know when there's grant opportunities. And Rhonda Stevenson in our office does deal with the equipment grant, and her email is there too. And yes, okay, so Carrie, that must have been what you're asking. Okay, any other questions? Right now I'm at the end of the chat. Well, thank you. We appreciate everything you guys have done the last, I'm starting to lose track. I keep saying 18 months, but I think we're over that mark. I don't know, but it just seems like forever. It's been challenging. Anybody else? I don't want to keep anybody on that. We all have stuff we can be doing, I assure you. Sometimes we might look at this though as just a reason to just sit and talk for a few minutes or chat through virtually. Anyway, if you have questions though, we're here for you. Reach out to your field staff. Just a reminder, you've got to keep your records. You've got to keep your production records. Please, that has not been waived. Production records have not been waived. Okay, thank you. We will plan on the next call in 2 weeks. We're going to keep with a bi-weekly call. I think it's just good to just touch base. And who's to say, we might get more guidance. They keep saying another Q&As coming out, so we'll see. And again, the several waivers that came out last week that we're waiting on some guidance on as far as terminology they're using. Again, I do not feel that it applies to schools, but if something was to come up, we of course would let you all know. And I don't see any more questions, but I see a lot of thank yous, and I want to thank you all too. Keep it up. I hope things are going well, and we'll talk in 2 weeks. If something was to come up and we needed to chat before that, we will definitely do that. But we're here for questions. Please reach out to us if you need help, you need technical assistance, please let us know. Let us know. Have a great week, and we will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for all you do. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.